All right, everybody, welcome to Unfiltered. We're glad you're joining us this morning. We are live in St. Louis, Missouri, and we're glad that you guys are all tuning in wherever you're listening from. As you know, this podcast is basically a platform for Pastor Jason to share his unfiltered views from a pastor's perspective on hard to talk about topics from the church, social, political issues as well. And his ultimate goal is really just to share God's word along with his personal opinions on these topics. And today, my name is Austin Gaszak. I'm actually filling in. Pastor Jason is out of town, and so we are live in the studio this morning. I got my coffee in hand. I've got a couple of special guests here with me this morning, and I'm going to get to them here in just a second. But we want to remind you guys that you can listen every Saturday live at 7 a.m., which is how you're probably listening to us right now. Or you can go back and listen to the replay on Sundays at 8 at 93.3 FM or the Real Talk Radio app. You can also find us on the Roots Church YouTube channel by searching Unfiltered and viewing the latest podcast, basically, because we go back and post this at a later date. And, one of the things we like to say is that most of the stuff we want to talk about is common sense, but as you know, common sense isn't really all that common anymore. And so we've got a great lineup for you this morning. We just wanted to kind of take a few seconds. We've got a new guest in the studio, Bo. I don't know, have you ever been on Unfiltered before?
No, I have not. This is the first time. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you this morning. So tell us a little bit about yourself. We've also got Becca in the studio. She is she's a vet at this point.
Third time's a charm.
Yeah. And so basically, one of the things that I wanted to do was introduce you, Bo. You are our groups director. You and your wife, Ashley, are groups directors here at Roots. How is groups going, and how was your groups this past week?
Yeah, it's going fantastic. We have like 250 people involved in small group Bible studies, a little over 20 groups as a whole. And our group is fantastic. We've developed really great friendships with everybody in our group. And so every time we get together, it's a lot of fun. Yeah. We had breakfast for dinner on this last Tuesday.
So cool. I love breakfast for dinner. Becca doesn't like breakfast dinner. I can tell by the look on your face.
I just don't know. I don't like breakfast foods.
Okay.
I like fair food.
Okay.
That would be it.
All right.
I don't want to talk about food. Last time we did this, it didn't go well for me. I'm still traumatized.
She is minding her words at this point in this topic.
Yeah, we always have good discussion, interesting discussion, and some fun discussion.
Yeah,
cool. As well.
You had said we were off air earlier, and Bo was talking about this. What is this new movie that you're?
Well, we had finished talking about the subject, which the subject was from Pastor Jason's message of just talking about things that we think are in the Bible that it's not actually what God said. And so we were talking about that subject and then at the end, discussion, as many times does with that group, gets off the rails a little bit. And I had brought up that there was a horror movie that's coming out about Winnie the Pooh, but Winnie the Pooh is a serial killer. And it's called Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. It looks horrible. Absolutely horrible. And so I brought that up. No one believed me that it was actually happening. And I said, look it up. And so Google, of course, tells you everything. And yes, there's a movie coming out called Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. And so we had a little discussion about that and the craziness of a world. And then I went to pray right after that. And so I started off the prayer with thank you, God, for allowing us to be together, and just pray for all the Pooh villains out there. And I didn't realize how funny that was until it came out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And then I could not stop laughing in the middle of our prayer. And one of the people in our group said, "You're our group leader. You're supposed to be able to pray. Just get on with it." And I could not stop. I was crying. I was laughing so hard.
That's awesome. Yeah. And under your guys' leadership, we've actually had more enrollment attendance in groups and small groups than at any other time at Roots Church. And so that's really cool.
Awesome.
I think it was primed for just more growth in that area for sure.
Yeah.
People want to get connected.
Yeah.
Post-pandemic and all that, especially they want to be more connected. So
yeah, for sure.
Good.
Well, we're glad to have you on today. We're going to bring Bo back in the second segment. He's got some things he wants to share, as well as Becca. But until then, Becca, what do we got going on at the church? We got some upcoming events that we can talk about here this morning. Anything?
Yeah. I'm super excited. We have Candy Mania coming. It is one of our biggest events here at Roots that we hold for the community. It's October 29th. It's a free, massive trunk or treat. It is so much fun. Last year we had like 2,000 people here, and it's just a great time. It's open to the community. It's from 4 to 6 p.m. So if you like candy, get here.
I love candy.
Even if you're not a kid, listen, I'll still give you candy. We didn't put an age limit on it, so I guess technically anybody can come.
That might be. We might want to now.
No, it's too late.
Yeah. Cool. How do they find more information about that?
Yeah, so all the things that Roots is up to, not just Candy Mania, but like our classes and different opportunities to get connected, get plugged in, find community, is through the Roots app that's on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. You can go to the Roots website.
Don't mention that, the Google Play Store.
Listen, Austin, I hate to break it to you, but some people are Android users.
Oh my God. If you're an Android user, comment right now on the app, on the Real Talk app, and I will try to get Apple to fund you to make that switch over to the Apple plantation.
Don't let Austin bully you.
Yeah.
It's okay. The Roots app works on Android devices as well. That's what matters.
Yeah.
So either the app or the website, Facebook, Instagram, we've got all the ways to get connected, to find out what's going on. We just don't have Twitter because Twitter's dead.
Yeah, no one tweets.
Or it's dying.
Twitter is dying.
Thanks.
Yeah,
is it Jack Dorsey? Is that who it was? Who was this? Yeah, thanks, Jack Dorsey.
It is
the moment he took
fast.
Trump off, I feel like everybody. No, I mean, there's still quite a bit of a following. If you're famous, people
Maybe we'll
are
get a
following
Truth
you.
Social account.
Yeah, probably.
Is that too much?
Probably not. Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't know, but we do have some other things coming up. Our Roots Cafe is opening here very soon.
So exciting.
And today's the 17th, Saturday, and we're not going to give you the details on when that's opening yet, but it is coming very soon. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. What is that handle?
The handle for the cafe is _Roots_Cafe. Cool. You can find it by going to our normal Roots account. Everything's like cross-linked, cross-marketed. So stay tuned for super exciting updates. We have a really uniquely curated menu that we're going to be releasing details on. We'll be releasing the opening dates and all kinds of fun stuff coming up with the cafe.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I feel a little awkward because Bo is actually he owns a cafe across town here in St. Clair.
But we're friends.
We're all friends,
and we support each other.
Yeah, and we do, and that is what free enterprise capitalism is all about, and it's a pretty cool thing.
It's two places to hang out, to get good coffee, get different types of food items, because we're not going to be carrying the same things. That's part of it, is differentiating our offering. So there's room for all of us.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool because if you've never been to St. Clair before, we are a small town. All right. And and now we've got BB Coffee Lab, we've got Roots Cafe, we've got Blondie's, we've got Gibby's, we've got Trace Street, we've got things are up and coming.
Buenos Vibras, two Mexican restaurants in one town.
We are moving up in the world, and all I got to say is you have an even better reason now to come to St. Clair, visit us, maybe come to the Roots Cafe, and then head over to BB Coffee Lab and get a second one.
Yeah, their chicken Caesar salad, man. I don't know how we're going to compete because it is the best thing.
Oh, we got some stuff in the works, so I'm excited about that.
I'm drinking BBs right now, so I love them just as much.
And I am drinking, because the Roots Cafe isn't open yet, I'm drinking good old Dunkin' Donuts K-Cup from the Keurig. So black coffee, it's really good.
To each their own.
Yeah, for sure. But, well, if you have any questions, we wanted to remind you to text those questions in 314-924-4215 and make sure that you send us an emoji. We want to know that you're listening. And we really do want to get your thoughts on what are some of the things that you want to hear Pastor Jason talk about in the future, or when he has guests come in. We would like to know, do you have any experts that you want us to bring in on the show that you've maybe been wanting to hear about? And we've got some great content for you coming up. And what we're going to be talking about here in just a few seconds is deconstruction. What that looks like more specifically to the faith community. There's a lot of controversy around this, and good and bad, I think, and we're going to kind of dive into that. We're also going to do later in the second segment, we're going to talk about a Supreme Court ruling that has happened, and Bo has probably got some stuff for us as well. So don't go anywhere. We're bumping up against the break. Guys, we're so glad that you're tuning in with us this morning. We know you could be listening anywhere, and you are tuned in here, so we want to say thank you. We'll be right back with Unfiltered. And we're back, guys. Good morning. We're live here in the studio. It's a Saturday morning, guys. Fall is here. I feel like Dave Murray might disagree, but he says that we won't really start seeing fall weather until October. But I'm already feeling the vibes, and I love it. So, well, we are back with Bo Beckemeyer, our groups director here at Roots Church, and we've also got Becca Carmen in the studio, our creative director and producer for the day, because our producer is out of town. And Pastor Jason is out of town, and so I'm here. My name's Austin Gaszak. I'm filling in. I'm your host today. So, Becca, you brought a couple of really cool, not really cool at all, but interesting topics that you had wanted to kind of talk about. Let's gonna dive into that this morning.
Yeah, really the first one I saw, anytime you see the words Supreme Court turned over a ruling and then the words like religion, I'm like, oh, what's going on now?
Yeah.
Like
Trigger.
There's always something. Exactly.
I'm triggered.
So I kind of was like looking around to see what's going on, because all you see, is like passive aggressive tweets or statuses or stories or whatever. And so I kind of looked further into it, and evidently in the state of New York, there's a university. I'm going to call it Yeshiva University. I might be saying that wrong. I'm very sorry to those people if you hear this. But basically what's happened is they have a student group who formed in like 2018, and it's an LGBTQ plus group, and they want to be recognized officially by the university. And the university is deeply like religious. It is I believe a Jewish Orthodox university.
It's definitely a Jewish university based on that name.
Well, the name, kind of gives it away.
It might even be Yeshiva University. I don't know.
I thought there was like some other, but here I am. I'm not Jewish, so
it's okay.
Sorry, everybody. But anyway, so they don't want to recognize this university, and the groups are upset. Like they file some sort of like lawsuit through whoever wants to take that case. And the state of New York originally said, what was it? They said that the university had to acknowledge it. Well, then the university's fighting the court, so then they escalate it somehow to the Supreme Court. And last Friday, just over a week ago, so I guess it's 2 Fridays ago, not yesterday, they said that in like the initial ruling that the university had the right to say no to this group. So people are outraged. People are like, this is a violation of, or this is discrimination of like our rights in the LGBTQ community. And then other people are just like super upset. They're talking about the abortion stuff. They're like the government overreach and all these things, and religion shouldn't matter. It's a school. And so it's just like straight chaos. Well, then just a couple days ago, they came back and said, hey, we're actually going to push this back to the state, and then they're going to decide if this group should be recognized or not. So it's not about religion. It's not a religious ruling, but it's a procedural ruling. But they've kind of already like dipped their toes into the waters of Supreme Court ruling in a religious situation.
I think
that's in the state of New York.
Yeah.
I think the problem I have with that is that it's a private. Is it a private university?
I believe so.
So if it's a state university, I don't have a problem with the pushback.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a problem with the pushback.
Well, it depends on the
anyway.
funding, right? Like, where does the funding come from?
But if it's a private university, and especially with religious values, to me, according to our Constitution, they have every right to be as selective as they want to be.
Right. That's where our religious rights come into play.
Right.
Is that we can have private entities that actually get to decide what is allowed and not allowed.
Yeah. And so I think that's a slippery slope. And I don't know that pushing it back to the state in this specific regard, because it relates so closely to the First Amendment.
Yeah.
That it should be a state decision. I don't know.
Well, I think part of the trouble is like the university says that they're deeply religious. They do, per their website, require religious classes to be taken.
Sure.
But one of the quotes I read said something about their charter being a public charter. So when they originally set up this institution, that they submitted themselves as a public school, even though it's like, I guess, a public school with a really like specific scope of operations. And I wonder if it comes down to that legality of them being able to say like yes or no. They have a dress code. Like I was on their website because I'm like, let's see what they say. They have a dress code even for students. That's a very modest dress code that I've never seen at a college.
I'd be interested to see if they're a privately funded university, but I don't. That's interesting.
It's definitely interesting, and it starts to really teeter on, you're talking about discrimination on someone's lifestyle based on like religious freedom. So you have
Right.
two super hot topics that are now going to be like battling head to head.
Well, and either way, this is a slippery slope, and I'm sure we're gonna see. I pray not, but I'm sure we're gonna see some extreme government overreach with the state of New York. Unfortunately, that's par for the course for them. And kind of speaking of government overreach, coming out of this pandemic, we've seen kind of a shift really in not only the work culture in ministry, but also the church attendance when it comes to what we're seeing now. Bo, I mean, you kind of want to speak on that a little bit?
There's a huge discrepancy among geographical regions, church type, but I think a lot of us felt that there was at least a 30% loss in church attendance on a weekly basis. And I'm sure plenty of you listeners out there in different churches have seen that over the last 2 years because of the pandemic. There's a lot of studies that now are coming out that were kind of past most of the pandemic, that there's roughly around a 30% loss of people that are not coming back physically to church. There might be people who have watched online. There might be doing church in different ways, but they're not coming back. And it's such an interesting thing within the church culture, because no matter what changes have happened culturally, it has changed the church.
Yeah.
The pandemic has changed the church without anyone having any, we didn't design it to be that way. It's just what happened.
It's like a side effect.
It is a huge, and obviously in Missouri, we're lucky because the restrictions weren't nearly as bad.
Yeah.
But I have visited with churches out in California. I've visited with churches out east, and they literally for more than a year were not having attendance in the building.
How do you come back from that?
I know. And so as they're slowly getting back, they're realizing that they've lost a percentage that they will never gain back.
And where are these people now? I mean,
well, did they go to another church, or they just, now are they like abandoning
'Cause
their beliefs
it
based on
definitely gave that
convenience?
opportunity to seek out other churches.
Right. And
we got some
attachment.
for sure.
Yeah, this happened to us. Missouri had less regulation than most other states. Eric, our worship pastor, his church at the time where he was coming from, his state had very strict, stringent.
Yeah, I think one of the strictest in the country.
Yeah.
Besides California.
And so they were definitely affected. We were less affected. And really I was disappointed by the response of the church during the pandemic, to be honest. It felt like a lot of churches, the capital C church, took the easy way out, and we were not one of those churches. We continued on, we pushed forward, and not to say that we do everything right or that our way is the way, but that was just the burden on our pastor's heart. Yeah. He felt like that was what God had.
We did take the time to really evaluate what our direct community was saying. We were shut down for a little bit there.
Yeah, there's no playbook for that.
No.
Oh
and
my
so
gosh.
I think
you're writing it as you go.
A lot of pastors felt like they were showing their community they were leading from fear instead of faith.
Yeah.
And that was detrimental to people being able to live out in faith instead of in fear as well. Yeah. So,
well, we're up against the break. We'll continue this on the other side. We'll be right back. And we are back. We're glad you guys are joining us this morning. In the last segment, we were talking a little bit about kind of post-pandemic church culture. We had this speaking series last year in, I believe it was May. No, it was 2020, New Normal. Oh, and I remember that vividly. That was one of the most vivid kind of phrases of that day. And so we've been talking about how church attendance has dropped across the board 30%. And so we kind of were talking about that. Bo, you had some interesting kind of facts for us regarding kind of demographics when it comes to this.
Yeah, but I mean, going back to, there's a lot of stats that have finally come out to show what the pandemic has caused within the church culture. And a big one is just seeing the decline. They showed that in 2020, there actually was higher attendance rates, but they were factoring in online. Once online kind of, the shininess of that kind of wears off. Yeah. Eventually people have to find that community. Interesting thing was from 2020 through till 2022, Barna's saying that there was a 25% loss in attendance in boomers, which if you think about boomers as being, the generation that is established the church and are the core of what the church has been for the last 30 years, there's a loss of 25%. A fourth of boomers in 2022 are not going to church.
My gosh.
And that's just surprising to me.
Yeah.
And then millennials, it's talking about in here the fact that millennials and younger are maybe finding that church community in different ways than we see. And I think that that's where the church's challenge is to figure out where are the generations finding community and that religious church community, because I think there's a way to tap into that and draw people back in if we can figure out where they're finding community. Because I think everybody's going to find some sort of community somewhere.
They're finding it somewhere. And, I think one of the things that this pandemic has brought out is the fear culture. So it was interesting to me because, I've been taught, and I know you guys, you Bo, have grown up in church, that you always honor and respect authority, right? And as long as what the authority is telling you to do does not contradict God's word, then we are to submit to that authority. And I feel like a lot of pastors and a lot of people, maybe those boomers, this is no like slight, a lot of people use that term boomers.
My kids like to call me boomer.
Hey, boomer.
And I'm like, I take that as a compliment.
Yeah. But like they've been really taught that, like to respect authority. And so whenever a state or the federal government says you need to stay home, you need to stay off the streets, you need to stay, here's your quarantine, guidelines. I think my generation is more apt to, especially I would say on the libertarian or the right, is more apt to challenge that.
Yeah.
And so you're going to see more physical attendance, maybe not even for the right reasons.
Yeah, maybe just as like a stance.
And I feel like that's kind of where things have gone. Now, obviously, things I feel like have stabilized because, there's a church we follow in California, Mosaic. They still have to RSVP for attendance.
Oh, wow.
Every week. And that has affected attendance because if you do not RSVP, they won't let you in per the state of California's regulations. So this is a full out, it feels like an assault on, again, religious institutions, et cetera. So, Bo, you have
It's interesting here because it says that they call it holders, hoppers, and dropouts. So people who stayed in the church that they attended pre-pandemic is 61%.
Okay.
So that's 29% of people are not attending the same church. That means they're either have not gone back or they went to another. Hoppers, the one is 1 in 4, so 23%.
We know what those are.
Of people have decided,
Pretty
but again, that it afforded the opportunity for people to say, you know what, I'm not sure that I'm okay with the leadership and the way they're handling this, or you know what, I've had some issues with the church, and it gave people a detached opportunity.
Absolutely.
There's no commitment, there's no community, there's none of that for 6 months. Now I'm going to decide to go to another church. So 23% of those people, and then they call it dropouts at 1 in every 6. So 16% who have just stopped attending church completely. And I think that that's where a lot of churches that were already struggling, whether it was leadership or issues within their church, it just highlighted it to the nth degree, the pandemic. And I think that there's a loss, and it's sad because I think that ultimately people are missing out on a community that is more than just getting on Facebook. It's more than just
the
watching
metaverse.
the metaverse or whatever, because there's a connection amongst people that are actually serving and striving and worshiping the God. That brings way more than any other community can find. So it is sad. I think that there's a podcast I listen to and they call it the state of, even on Barber, the state of the church today. That is the state of the church. Whether we like it or not, those stats are real. And it is what we're going to have to.
We could have titled this segment, "Where Are They Now?"
Yeah.
It's a sad truth. I mean,
and how do you go, where do you go back? How do you go back from that? These people who've already decided like that they weren't, there's so many churches out there. Like, even if you have you don't agree with the direction of a church or the leadership, like you could have found another church. So if you haven't found any church, what are you doing?
Because
how do you get them
you're
back?
Finding community somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the enemy, and when we talk about the enemy, we're talking about the devil, right? We're talking about evil, Satan. The enemy is so good at making things that are not good for us look good.
Enticing.
And isolation.
Satisfying.
And satisfying. And it is for a while. It is for a little bit. It's the same thing with sin. Sin is fun for a while. But there's always a consequence, unintended or not. And one of the things is that it looks enticing, especially for somebody like me, an introvert, is some alone time. Too much alone time is called isolation. And in isolation, we become weakened to the attacks of the enemy. We need community. We need physical interaction. We need those things. It's a fundamental human necessity that we were created for community. And so I would say this to anybody listening that is considered a dropout when it comes to this post-church pandemic, if you've stopped going to church or whatever, Roots Church is not for everybody. But if you are curious to know what it is like to find a community, we encourage you to come. Check us out. We have weekend experiences every Sunday, 9 and 11. You can follow us on Facebook for more information, or Monday nights at 7 p.m. And if you are in an area where you're too far away from St. Clair, Missouri, guess what? There are plenty of churches around you.
Every block,
okay? We've got 35 of them in St. Clair. And guess what? They all are doing something. And that's the most important thing. So get connected. We encourage you to find a community. Don't be satisfied with online. Online's great, but we want you to physically get connected. It doesn't have to be our church. Just get connected in a community. And that's how God intended us to be. And so it's such a vital thing. And I think we were talking speaking of church, we were talking this past week, Pastor Jason was talking about, God didn't say, what's the title of the series?
We're in the series, God Didn't Say That.
Yeah. And it's these things that we have made up.
Yeah.
Like the phrase specifically is God won't give me more than.
Well, and the Christians are the guilty ones,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
We're the ones saying it.
God won't give me more than I can handle. God didn't say that.
It sounds churchy though.
It does.
Yeah,
it sounds fire.
good.
That's tweetable if Twitter was still a thing. And so it's like those things sound good, but that's not what God actually said. And he tells us that he won't give us more temptation than we can handle. But I think this kind of opens up a bigger conversation. We've got about 5 minutes left on this segment. This phenomena of deconstruction, faith deconstruction in the church. And are you guys familiar with this at all?
That's a big one.
It is a big one.
In the church culture right now, it's a huge discussion for sure.
And it's popular among my generation.
Yeah.
And so, I found I didn't even know this was a thing.
Your generation.
Yeah.
Not my generation.
Yeah, not yours.
Becca, okay, Bo.
Becca and our generation,
Yeah.
whatever. But, so if you're out there and you are a millennial, we band together. Okay. Boomers, don't look down on us because we're young. But I think it's interesting because I didn't know this was a thing. I didn't know it had a name.
Mm-hmm.
And deconstruction simply, it's not really simple. I guess it is. Simply is a phenomenon within the American evangelical church in which Christians rethink their faith and they jettison or throw out previously held beliefs, sometimes to the point of no longer identifying. That's a word we hear a lot now, as Christians. It's closely related to the ex-evangelical movement back in 2015 or so. What are your guys' thoughts on this? I've got some thoughts, but I want to kind of hear from you.
It's interesting because it's kind of what you just mentioned. There's definitely levels to that.
Sure.
There are people who are looking back and think it's kind of the topic that we're talking about
Right.
is what have I been told?
Yeah.
And I think that if you're a Christ follower and you want to go deeper and understand yourself even better, but also understand the relationship with God, you've got to ask those questions to some extent. I think the scary part is, and I remember Ashley and I were we were on a road trip together, I think driving down to Nashville or something. So we listened to a podcast, and one of them was a pretty prominent pastoral figure over the last 20 years, around 2015.
Was it Matt Chandler?
I don't think it was Chandler.
Okay.
It was another.
I was just curious because he's mentioned in this article.
Yeah, there's been a number of prominent Christian leaders that kind of go down this path and eventually get to the point of saying, I no longer identify with Christianity.
Yeah.
And I think that is a scary, scary road to go down because you can't, what God's word is what we base our faith on. And
Right.
so when you start to, now, along with that, I think that there's some healthiness to asking the questions.
Yeah.
And having those discussions. But when you do it you silo yourself into this place where all you're doing is just questioning everything.
Yeah.
That's where it becomes unhealthy.
It's a tool of the enemy.
Well, it's hard for me because I didn't grow up in the church, right? And then for a brief stint, in like my early teen years, I was strongly encouraged to go to a church by my parents. And I, like, from the get-go, because I never grew up with any religious affiliation, really. And then I was, like, thrown into this church. I thought it was wonky. I thought it was weird. I did not like it. I was rebellious. And I was like, no, I'm going to be mean until you let me go home. And so eventually, like, I stopped going, but I was there for a couple years. And so that put such a bad taste in my mouth that for me, it's not necessarily a thing of deconstruction. I can't identify with that, but I can identify with not allowing questions. Like you said, like, it is healthy to ask questions, and I was at a place where I couldn't. And so it wasn't until I was an adult and able to figure that out for myself. So I think there's a healthy line between pushing things on kids, but leaving space for questions and conversation and for them to understand and build a relationship on themselves, not based on their parents' relationship.
Yeah. I think that deconstructing my denomination
That's
is
where
a
I'm
healthy
at.
place to start.
That's
because
where I'm at.
I mean, I grew up in denominational church, Baptist church specifically.
God bless you.
And yeah, thank you. But and went to Baptist University, worked in 2-3 Baptist churches. And I don't have nothing majorly against Baptist.
Right.
But I think questioning what a denomination has been telling you for a long, long time, for a couple hundred years.
Yeah.
There's good. I mean, I think that the flip side of that too is that there's been so many negative, nasty, dirty things about the church that have come out of the last 20 years that a lot of people question a lot of things.
Yeah.
And without doing that in a healthy, safe place, that's a little scary.
Well, and that's lack of transparency there.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and
that's why we are the way we are.
And that's why our generation is
Yeah.
now questioning, because we weren't necessarily allowed to question. I don't feel like growing up. I definitely don't think I was. I think where I'm at with it is in line with where you're at, Bo. I think it's a healthy thing to a certain point. And I think you can take it too far, as with anything. And so I think it's all about balance. It's all about the conviction of the Holy Spirit on your heart, where you're at. I do think there are some things that we need to question. There are things, and you'll know that. And it's just because it was taught to you in the church growing up doesn't make it true.
But question those in discussion with somebody else that you trust.
Correct.
I think doing
Yes.
it by yourself. and
Don't
just
rely
questioning-
Don't go
on
to the
Google.
internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Google is as
It's
we
just
all
like
know.
Googling your symptoms. You can't Google anything about.
It's a rabbit hole, right? So balance with everything. This hour has flown by. We're glad that you guys are tuning in and joining us. We will be right back with Unfiltered. Well, welcome back to Unfiltered this morning. In the last segment, we were talking a little bit about deconstruction, and I want to kind of wrap that up just briefly, and then we're going to move on to something more fun and lighthearted. I think we do need to question things. This is my soapbox at this moment. Don't give me a radio show for a day if you don't want me to have one. But, the Bible says to test everything that we hear with fire. And it says that if we test it with fire and it burns, then it wasn't correct, or it wouldn't endure or stand the test of time. And if it gets refined or it lasts through the fire, then that means that we know that it was true and true through the end. And how do we test it with fire? What is that fire? Well, the fire is the Word of God. So if we test those things against what the Word of God says and it still stands true, then we know that it is true, and we don't need to deconstruct any further from that. If we do anything further than that, we're verging on dangerous territory. So I just kind of wanted to touch on that really quick, but we're going to move on to a really fun, I like this kind of stuff. I'm kind of a history nerd. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that doesn't mean I'm good at it, but I like to talk
love
about
history.
it.
Jensen, our oldest son,
Yeah.
he's in whatever college level history class he's in his senior year, and he's got this book, and it's like 5 inches thick. And I told him, I was like, can I just read through that like light reading?
Oh my gosh.
Because I love
dude,
history.
I am the same way. But if you hand me a math book like that,
No.
I'm going to throw that thing out the window. But this is going to do all the work for me. I've got this really cool site that I subscribe to. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I don't want you to take my content and then use it. But yeah, so this day, what happened on September 17th, this day in history?
Oh my gosh.
So a couple cool things. In 1683, Dutch scientist Antoine van Leeuwenhoek is the first person to report the existence of bacteria.
Oh wow.
I don't know, just kind of cool.
How did he he know?
How did he discover that?
Yeah, you don't have any
It's
details
got
for us?
it's got a hyperlink here. I'm scared to click on it because it's gonna bring up like all the science.
Who sneezed on that pea trap?
Right, you're right. That petri dish or whatever. This day in 1787, the U.S. Constitution was signed by delegates in Philadelphia at the Philadelphia Convention.
Austin, who has the largest signature?
John Hancock.
Oh, I didn't want you to know.
Yes.
Darn it.
I'm telling you, I'm a history buff until I'm not.
That's about my only trivia question for history.
Yeah, give me specific dates and I'll like, but this person, I'm not even going to mention him. It's about, I'm not going to mention it.
Anyway, going back to the signature.
Yeah.
It's funny, like, all the other guys, when John got up there and signed, they're like, oh, here's John again.
Yep.
Who do you think
Signing the
on Root
largest name
staff would have the
possible.
biggest signature?
Me.
Austin?
No, I don't know. No, it's my mom.
Your mom?
It is my mom. She does have a John Hancock signature. I mean, it's like elegant.
Yeah, but she
and-
wouldn't
I
do it
sign
on
a B
purpose.
and a scribble.
Yeah.
And a B and a scribble. I literally don't
BB
even
just,
do letters.
or Bo
I
just writes
scribble.
BB Coffee Lab.
That's right, it's BB. Oh, that's funny. Hank Williams was born in 1923 on this day.
Oh, happy birthday.
Famous birthday. Well, he's
Is
passed
he,
away.
oh, wait.
Yeah,
Never
he's
mind.
definitely passed away.
Oh, wait, duh.
He died.
You need to watch the history of
60
country
years
music.
ago.
Gosh. I told you I didn't want to talk.
No, you're fine. Let's see. Okay. This is kind of interesting. Dred Scott died this year. Not this year. Sorry. This day in history in 1858. So the famous Dred Scott.
Wow.
And yeah, this is a pretty cool site. I like stuff like
Do you
this.
get daily updates?
Yeah, they email it to me, and then it goes to like this folder, and I can view it or not.
Go check it out.
Yeah. 1964, the Beatles are paid, and they record a record $150,000 for a concert in Kansas. Back in those days, 1964, that was a lot of money. I don't know what it was.
That's a lot of money to me now.
Well, yeah, I've never quite seen that much, but back then, I just imagine like that's insane.
Wow.
Yeah. So, well, that's pretty much all I've got for this. This was a pretty cool. I like how it mixes it up, and it's not like just history. It's like sports and famous birthdays, and some of these other people I don't even know.
It's got some variety to it.
Yeah. So, we were talking a little bit on the break, some of our favorite TV shows. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. Do you guys have any that are radio and Christ-like appropriate to talk about?
Well, I don't know if it's Christ-like appropriate, but new Handmaid's Tale season dropped this week, and so I'm super excited to start that this weekend. It's not necessarily Christ-like, but it's interesting because the basis of this show is like religious principles, and they kind of take it to, they don't kind of take it. They take it to extremes. Like it is bananas, and they like build this whole dystopian society based off of like the word of God, except for they've made it their own word. It's super crazy. So good. If you guys haven't seen it.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, I have not
Alex.
watched that one.
No.
It is bananas.
Alex has tried to get me to watch that for like however long it's been out, and
Well, then why won't you?
I'm not about it.
Have you even tried?
I've seen the trailer, and I was like,
The trailer that's
all
a
these
minute
women
long.
dressed in bonnets and red.
It's Bad News Bears, but it's so good.
Just weird. I don't
So
know.
now that our youngest is, he's 9.
Oh,
Just turned
wow.
9.
Finn is 9.
Yeah.
So
I will cry.
But what we did, he hadn't seen all the Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
and so now that series is coming out,
yes.
we
I'm
did
just going to go now.
all of us, it was me and really 2 of our children that watched most of it. But we watched all the Lord of the Rings, and then we watched all the Hobbits.
Oh my gosh.
And we have not
How
started.
long did that take?
Oh, it's like,
it was like 2 weeks of like kind of getting through it.
please invite me next time. That is like
Yeah.
my dream.
You would like watching with Finn.
Oh my gosh.
Because he just like gets into it and he kind of cozies up next to you.
I
the
knew
whole time.
Finn was my
Aw,
favorite. I just, there
Finn's
was
the
something,
best.
I just knew
And
he would like Lord of the Rings.
Now Lincoln and Finn are both like, Dad, we got to watch the Rings of Power.
Yep.
So
my
I
gosh.
kind of want to watch ahead of them just to make sure.
I've
what
watched
it's
all
like
of them so far.
already.
Yes.
There's like 4 episodes.
3, and
Is it good?
I am not going to sully your opinion of it.
I watched like 20 minutes of the first one. I fell asleep.
Yeah, that's
It was
me.
a lot of backstory to begin with.
I would
they're
read
they're
these
connecting
books
the dots from
first.
what I can tell.
And you know what? Anything new like this, I want to give it a chance. The fact that they're making this content is like a dream come true. Like I want to go back into this Middle Earth experience. It's pretty cool.
It's almost like the Origins.
Yes. And so I'm giving it a chance. It is a little different for me. There's some cultural appropriation things that I'm not like a fan of. But
not necessarily against on what I've seen either on
Yeah.
some of them, but it's like you can tell it's obvious.
Yes.
That's the only thing.
Yeah.
Is this a TV show or are these just movies?
These are so the Lord of the Rings trilogies were first. That's
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
The crazy long thing.
Yep.
Yep.
And my girlfriend and I went for my birthday to the movie theater, and I didn't know it was the extended version of Lord of the Rings. We were there from 6:30 to
4 hours.
10.
Aw.
She was like,
Kenzie's
was
the best.
ticked. She was like, I want to go home. Anyway,
I didn't know what I was getting into.
yeah, she did not. And then the Hobbit trilogy comes after Lord of the Rings, and that is a prequel
To the Lord.
to the Lord of the
Oh
Rings.
no, I hate whenever like the
Well, just
prequel comes
with
out
the,
after.
Start with the Hobbit.
Yeah,
then.
start with the Hobbit.
No.
It's
I'd
pretty,
rather just read these books.
Yeah, they're
I
good.
have to read
No.
them and vet them before the movie.
Did you
comes.
read them?
I've read them.
You
Not
don't-
all of
well,
them.
you do not want to read Lord of the Rings because I read it.
It's like Maldor, the son of Baldur.
They go into so much
Oh,
detail in these
man.
books. You know, it's a fantasy book,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they describe the detail of the tree
Yeah.
to the
Oh.
nth degree
Yeah.
that it's like
Tolkien has a cult following. I mean, it is a so to give you a little bit of backstory. I am like a huge Lord of the Rings nerd.
I can tell.
Okay,
You stayed there for
I'm
3.5
not nearly
hours.
as
they have
big as you.
it's canon, right? They have a canon, a Tolkien canon where the new Amazon series cannot develop past a certain point because Tolkien himself, he's been passed away for a long time. He never got that far. So they have only this range of years to work with, and the details have to line up to his specifications. I mean, the range of years that they have is like 3,000 years. So it's like the first
my
age or
gosh.
something like that. So they have a lot to work with, but from what I've seen so far, I'm not overly enthused, but I am expectant to see, because they're supposed to do spin-offs from this, and
If you watch Handmaid's Tale, I'll think about it.
yeah, they've got a 5-season commitment.
That's what I
So-
got for you guys.
Those
Both
are
of you.
totally
Both of you.
Oh no,
different.
there's nothing you could do to make me do that. So you could pay me probably. I'd probably do it for some cash, but
I
whatever.
don't think you would.
Yeah, that Rings of Power I think has a 5-season commitment, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe that was House of Dragon. I don't know. It was one of those two.
You know a lot of
We'll get
details about
started.
this.
Yeah,
I'm not too. I mean, I'll wait till some of the episodes build up and then we'll
yeah.
get going.
This
on
has
it.
turned into the Lord of the Rings segment. Sorry for everyone listening.
I'm trying to resist it.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I hate, though, and you said you're going to let them build up, I despise TV shows you have to go week to week.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean like it used to be for
Yeah.
us Gen
Oh.
Xers?
That's how it is with this Rings of Power thing. I'm like,
just gotta-
oh, I
You're
just
killing
wanna-
me. We used to have to wait for the exact time on the exact day and sit at the TV and watch it, or record it on a VHS with a remote that was tied in by
Sorry,
a cable.
boomer.
I want to binge it, but hey, guys, we are all out of
Oh,
time
man.
today. We are so thankful that you decided to join us. We'll see you next week, Saturday at 7 a.m. or for the replay on Sunday at 8. We'll catch you then.